And we're live. I'm getting so good at this.
Yeah.
I'm super proud of myself because usually, I don't know. I've struggled in the past and lately it's been so much better. Anyway, hello everybody. Thank you for being here. Welcome back to Mastering the Drop, a real view of recovery. I'm so excited for today because we're going to be talking about something that's super special, very prevalent, and not generally viewed in the realm of need of a recovery need. In that people don't normally associate it with addiction or recovery because of the narrow perspectives that surround those two words. And I have today with me Geva Salerno. Did I say that right? I don't know why I'm tongue-tied over your name today, like we talk all the time. And we're going to be having like a really great conversation and sharing both of our perspectives on this, because codependency is a real thing and it can be so destructive. And so we want to be able to bring to you today different ways to navigate paths back to a more healthier, more fulfilling way of experiencing life and living. So hopefully, we'll be able to shed some light, answer some questions, and help you move out of this stuck, trapped, defined by others, reality and space in your life. So if anything resonates for you, please drop the questions in the comments. We're not going to take live questions. We won't be answering them live. However, we will circle back around and answer them after we're done and when our schedules allow for us to pop back in sometime throughout the day today. We will also be dropping both of our contact information into the comment section so that you can reach out to either one of us. Anyway, for me, my people-pleasing codependency really resonated and showed up based on trauma from my childhood and early experiences and feelings of abandonment, being left behind, traumatic loss and things like that derived that, but also from some much deeper, more traumatic events. I've talked about this in the past, domestic violence, sexual assault, and things like that formulated different thought processes to me. So I always felt like I needed to be defined by how other people saw me and perceived me and their judgment of me. And therefore, I was quite frequently either A, resistant or reluctant to show up as myself, or B, reluctant to do anything without getting approval first, making sure that I didn't get that, oh no, that's stupid, kind of thing. But also as I was, growing and as a young adult into adulthood, just even becoming a parent and really feeling so reliant on that, unconditional love of a child and knowing that they weren't going to leave, but then being afraid that what if something happens, which really was anxiety inducing for me. And then, with adding a lot more children, that became even more prevalent as there was, childhood disease, cancer, and other, scary, tragic things. And then the empty nest. And so on and so forth. So, it was just this people-pleasing need to be everything and anything everybody else needed me to be first, and in the way that they needed it first, and to deliver at a level that really fed my need for perfectionism and really discounted the things that were pulling at me for my purpose in life and what would really feed my soul. And so the shift for me has been life-changing, right? Learning how to live for myself first without feeling guilty, without feeling selfish, without feeling punished or restricted. because my recovery journey also included other things such as chemical dependency, and trauma healing and eating disorders and so it's an all encompassing, it's a consuming, a life consuming, debilitating, paralyzing way of functioning if you don't keep your eye on it, if you aren't working to keep it in check or in a manageable fashion, or working to move out of it altogether. And Geva, I know, you and I have talked a lot, but how do you define codependency in your space?
Well, first, I want to say that I'm not coming at this from a clinical background. So I just want to give that kind of disclaimer that what I have to say and share today is coming from the standpoint of both being a writer and being someone who has experienced codependency. So who I am is I'm a writer living in Southwest Florida, and I'm the founder of a group called Over 40 Fearless and Free, which is an international women's group and movement to help women kind of find themselves and find their own value, a purpose, and create a better world by becoming happier, basically. So that's a little context. When we get into codependency, it's kind of interesting because the way it's defined by some people is that it's an emotional and behavioral condition. It's not a mental illness, but some people consider it a condition. Other people consider it a psychological construct. The way I like to think of it is as a psychological dynamic. So when we talk about dynamics, we're talking about when there are forces at play that we may not be even aware of that affect how a situation or a relationship will change and how it will evolve. So you've got the forces acting, and then you've got the outcomes. And if we don't know what these forces are, oh my gosh. So I spent, pretty much my entire life not understanding why I acted certain ways, why situations were certain ways. And it was really up until this last year or two when I started learning about codependency and some other pieces of psychology that the pieces came together like a puzzle. And for the first time, I feel so empowered now because that I do understand what forces were at play and what forces are at play in my own psychology and in my own subconscious. So when we to make it a little more concrete, let's talk about how codependency kind of comes about. Now, earlier, like in the past, I think that codependency actually was connected more with addiction. Like you would hear about someone being codependent with an addict. And that was always the way. It was this person that was sort of enabling an addict. It was the codependent spouse or the codependent child. But codependency doesn't just come from that. It can come from an addiction situation, but it can also come from a situation or like a childhood where there was violence, where there was instability. And what happens, I'll give you a couple more examples in a second, but what happens is that when there is this kind of instability in the relationship with the primary caregivers, whether that's parents or grandparents or whoever is the primary caregiver, whenever there's that feeling of insecurity and not knowing what's going to happen next because of addiction, because of violence, because of whatever, a person, including myself, would develop a need for approval from this caregiver in order to feel safe. They would, if a person has codependency, you are so focused on trying to create safety within yourself because of this crazy instability, this crazy unstable atmosphere, or it could be even just not having a secure relationship with your primary caregiver. So if your relationship with your mother or father was distant, you might be doing everything you can, consciously or subconsciously, to get the attention that you need, get that approval, get that safety from that adult. I was watching recently a show about Amy Tan, the writer, and she was describing her childhood, and it was so amazing. She grew up with a mother who was suicidal, and this mother would like threaten suicide all the time, like frequently just threaten, I'm going to kill myself, so when you're in a situation like that, you become very attuned to someone else's emotions. So go ahead.
You know what? It's just bringing up a cross association just for say my clients that are listening, right? Or especially those that are newer, right? So if we're looking at the way I describe it and the way that I relate to this is a theory called the locus of control theory. So we have these things outside of us that we are relying on to bring us, to validate us, to have us feel value, to have us have worthiness, to even having feelings of being heard or appreciated or important or not disposable, not dismissed, and all of these things, right? It's seeking things outside of ourselves to bring us peace, joy, comfort, right? Relief, whatever it is, that person, that parent becomes that external drive. It becomes that external element that we'd be relying on, just like the alcoholic relies on the alcohol for a stressful day. Like they're reaching for the alcohol, the codependent would be reaching for either the parent or the spouse or the something for their approval, for their love, for their support, or just even to spark an argument because, hey, I know how to get a rise out of this person, right? Insert the 3-year-old who knows not to hit their mom, but does it anyway because they're clearly just trying to get some attention, right? But so that's all this external thing, and we're all born in the external position, but it's about our modeling what is taught to us about how we move into this internal place. So codependents, for all intent and purposes, remain more in that external position where they do. And so something you all might want to look at is how do you feel and what do you need from your social media interaction, right? I like to use this one because if you put a post out and nobody puts a thumbs up, like, how do you feel? If nobody comments on it or nobody shares it or nobody gives you a whoop whoop, that's amazing. Like, does that make you feel like crazy? Are you sitting there and checking every 5 minutes to see if somebody new, like, put heart? That's an external locus of control. That's a codependency, right? So just to bring in that current thing that I know.
I want to elaborate on that too and add to it that when basically a codependent person is real, their awareness is outside of their own body. So their awareness is so much on this other person or or whatever is happening around, and trying to create that sense of safety. So I'll give you an example from my life to explain codependency a little bit clearer. So when I grew up, I was in a situation with parents who were codependent on each other. Okay, that's where we start. Okay, I had one parent. I had one parent who had trauma and addiction, and another parent who had trauma and really strong codependency on the addict. But they were so dependent on each other; they were like glued together. Okay, so what happens when you have people that are so focused on each other, right, that they cannot even manage their own lives, and they cannot focus on being there for their 4 children? Okay, so for me, my role as the oldest in the family was and here's the thing with codependency, there's so many rules. There's so many rules that are unspoken, that we internalize, that we don't even know are there until, somehow, like someone watching this might say, oh, that's me, that's what happened to me. So anyway, so many rules. One rule for me was take care of everybody else, take care of your sisters, make sure everybody is okay and safe at all times. A rule was obviously I can't have any needs. I can't have any problems. I couldn't have my own problems because everybody else's problems were more important. Another rule would be I would be silent. I must be in the background taking care of everybody else. So what happens with this is when you have these rules, that means you're learning things and taking things in, like I'm not important. I'm not valuable. I cannot speak up. I cannot express my needs. These are the things that, I internalized and didn't even know it. I didn't know these dynamics were in place. But what happens is it really affects your self-esteem because everyone else's feelings are more important. So everyone else's feelings are more important and they're out here and your awareness is of everyone else's feelings, there's nothing here. So as a codependent, we're taught you don't exist, basically. You don't exist and you don't have feelings and your needs are not important. We don't want to hear them. So your awareness is outside of your own body. And once you start to become aware of these things and you start to negate them and realize that these rules are BS. Hey, I wasn't born for these rules. Okay. I didn't accept these rules. Where did I sign up for this?
Yeah.
But some of the things that happen is, as an adult, as I was growing older, I was able to express myself in certain ways, but not at all in other ways. And it creates massive problems with dating and finding a partner because if you are so used to being attuned to someone else that you don't even know what your own feelings, needs, or wants are, it is really easy for a codependent to choose people who are exactly like the people that they're dependent on. So without even knowing it, you will be attracted to somebody who is either, like that parent that you were codependent with, or your husband that you became codependent with, that it didn't work out. You'll pick somebody else exactly like them without even knowing it, because that's your comfort zone. That's what you know. And that's what actually feels normal to you, is to be ignored.
It's also what you feel worthy of. What am I deserving of? And I hear that a lot, right? Like my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions, my opinions, my beliefs, my needs, wants, and desires aren't seen as valid. they aren't valued, they are dismissed and coined as unworthy, right? And I hear that a lot. I know I lived it for a significant period of my life, but you know, it's that message that we tell ourselves. I'm not worthy. I'm not deserving of more than this. Like, my role in life, my purpose, my place in this world is to be a caregiver. And I love being a caregiver. And it just fills my soul. We start telling ourselves it just fills my soul to be able to take care of everybody. Like,
That's all we know.
But you're not taking care of anybody because you're not taking care of yourself. And yeah, so it's a crazy thing. But the day that you start to negate it is like, wow, it's scary, it's rocky, it's uncomfortable, it's new, it's foreign, like a foreign language, and usually very ill received on the other side.
Yeah, before we get into that, because I really do want to talk about, give some people some warnings about this. But before we do that, we got to give them the good stuff first. We got to tell them how amazing it is when you start to create this new dynamic, this new way of looking at things. For me, just understanding the dynamics I was able to immediately, instantly negate some of it. Like, that doesn't work at all. That is so false. That rule, that's false. The problem is, of course, is that it's on the subconscious level. We've internalized it, and it's like a go-to pattern too. It's our go-to default pattern to these codependent things. But let me just say that I've been working really hard and I've been in therapy for a year and a half with somebody who is very familiar with codependency because she is a recovering, she's in recovery. I don't know what for, but she's in recovery, and she considers herself codependent as well. So she knows it, and has helped me in so many ways to see and understand the thinking and the dynamics. But I am now able to speak up. I have had so much to say, and now I'm starting to be able to, it's coming out like today, even this experience is part of me recovering from codependency, is to be able to express myself. I got into a healthy relationship. Yay. Now, granted, this relationship isn't 100% because as I said, a codependent will pick somebody else that has this opposite dynamic going on for them. And to an extent he did, but he is recovering. And as I'm getting healthier, he's also getting healthier. And it's the first relationship I've ever been in where I'm not experiencing massive anxiety, because I used to find dating and relationships so uncomfortable because I was always scared that, are they going to leave? Am I going to say the wrong thing? Why didn't they call? Was a recurrent theme of, you go through my journals. Why didn't they call yet, or whatever? It was a recurrent theme. So much anxiety. And in this relationship that I'm in, I don't need him to do that in order to feel safe. And I also am starting to learn to trust that everything's fine. Even if I didn't hear from him when I thought I would, I know that I will. So
control needs.
Yes. And it's affected me in so many different ways of getting over codependency. I'm so much happier in my life. It's definitely worth it. But now we have to talk about the warning. You're ready?
I'm ready for the warnings. I know the warnings, and you know, and I love my clients that I work on through this process because I get to bring my experiences in, but I love hearing other perspectives as well.
Okay, so the warning is that when you start getting over codependency, you start finding your voice, you start speaking up, the people around you are going to start to react because they're not used to you sticking up for yourself, and they're not used to you having an opinion and they're going to not definitely, but there is a chance that it's going to rock the boat and cause people to shift around on the boat. Like, how do I deal with this new person? And the warning is that sometimes they say that in codependent recovery, you could lose up to 80% of your relationships. And that means your relationships in your family, friends. Now, please know that it opens the space for new healthy relationships to come in, much healthier, ones that are going to support you, ones that care about what you think, ones that are really more meant to be with you than the codependent fake ones based on rules that are false.
Unconditional positive regard.
Relationships with people who have unconditional positive regard for you, and you deserve it. Everyone deserves their own space in this life. Everyone deserves their own space on this earth. Everyone deserves their own space within their own body, and to have their own opinions, to be able to express themselves. And you deserve recovery, and you deserve good, healthy relationships. So there's the warning, but also the, just be strong. Be strong.
It's important that we talk about the warnings because and I'm a coach. I'm out here. I work with people and I have colleagues and I have, people that, work in the same realm that I do, right? Like your therapist or whoever it is. I have studied it from an educational standpoint, from a psychological standpoint, from a process of behavioral, but I've also lived it. But here's the thing is if we come out here and we say, just pump it up and say, wow, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread and you can move through it. And here's the 9 steps you need to make, but we don't talk about the difficulties, then really we're just sales pitching it, right? Like we're trying to convince people to ditch their codependency without giving them, the full menu, which I guess a lot of people in my industry may do, but maybe they don't. I don't know. Certainly none of the people that I I put my stamp on or work with or collaborate with or put things together with. But I think, again, we're talking about a real view of recovery here. And codependency is, a behavioral attachment. It's for all intent and purposes an addiction because it's pretty compulsive and pretty consistent in nature. And it is very difficult to drop. There's definitely withdrawal. There's definitely anxiety. There's definitely fear. There's definitely, this feeling of emptiness and, oh my gosh, will anybody like me if, and all of these things. And it's hard to create your voice. And I have clients that, depending upon the level of severity when they enter, right? We could be together 3, 6, 9 months, some over a year, right? While we're learning what we may create a voice, we may learn how to assert ourselves into our life, which thereby, reduces our level of codependency and hiding behind the needs of others, and avoiding seeing ourselves or honoring ourselves or giving ourselves any grace. But the harder part is, you get that foundation and you've moved into this ability to assert yourself into your life. But now you got to ask yourself, what do I really want my voice to sound like? Right? What is going to be my true, genuine voice? Because depending upon how many years we're talking about of a conditioned way of being, what do I aspire for that to look like, sound like, be like, feel like, look like, or be received like? And so we have to, be able to continue to peel away that onion, the layers of the onion, and continue to cultivate it until it becomes something that feels like I've arrived. I've arrived. This is lifelong manageable and maintainable for me. I believe wholeheartedly. I'm operating from my moral compass or whatever it is that's important to you. And I have a voice, and I can be heard, and I believe in myself. But now how do I invite my environment in effectively and do so without directing, or do so, yada, 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 right? And we do this in my Evolve program. It's transform, attain, and then maintain. But so everybody has their different ways of doing it, but it's a process. It takes time. I've been in this journey of recovering from codependency for probably 8 years. And every once in a while, I'm like, oh man, I missed one. Like I missed a situation. I missed a topic. And I thought I was past that because of that subconscious that you're talking about, right? Like subconsciously, there's still something. And trauma in our childhood is all stored in our subconscious mind in a different way than regular memories.
Yeah, and I think it's like two things that you said. It's the subconscious, and it's also the attachment. So when we subconsciously still have an attachment to the way someone thinks, until all right, for myself, I'm going to say I had a really strong attachment to a particular caregiver and their whole scenario. And then when I learned about the codependency and that I was codependent on this person, and I didn't even know it, I was able to make the decision not to be involved with that person anymore. And because I'm like, no, I don't need your approval. I don't need anything from you anymore. Right. This was crazy. How did I get myself in this situation? Like, how did I end up in, I didn't choose this. So, but I don't know if everyone has to get to that point of pinpointing exactly what it was. But to me, that was pivotal to be able to walk away from that. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple other family members I realized, I kept trying to make the relationship with these people. This one person, I kept reaching out. Hey, let's do this. Let's do this. It never came back. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm going through this process of learning, I was like, no, I don't think so. I don't need that. I don't need that in my life. Done.
Relationships aren't one-sided. Everybody needs to be 100% in, or it doesn't work.
Yeah. So you may end up having people. Again, when we say that it's like a two-way street, codependency. Okay, the codependent needs this person, but this person also needs the codependent to act a certain way. So when the codependent stops acting that way, it rocks this person's boat, and they have to, re-examine themselves. Who am I without this codependent anymore? She's not there anymore. Who am I? Well, who does she think she is? So that relationship may fall apart, but you may decide too that you are not interested in the relationship, and that's why these things happen.
Yeah, you get to choose.
That's why the warning, the warning sign. So yeah, I've lost or given up some relationships, but I'm so much happier now, and have space for new relationships, some new relationships to come in, some good, healthy ones as well. So yeah, I wish that for everybody.
I like to give a visual, and I don't know if you use a visual, but like when we're talking about these people in our life, right? Just people, whether it's, just people in our community, whether it's our social circle, professional circle, our family, our best friends, whatever it is, our kids, right? Like we get to place them where we want them, right? So just because they're our family doesn't mean that they belong in our nucleus. They may not be the most emotionally supportive. They may not be 100% in. They may be that person that needs me to feed their ego, or they may be that person that only has use for me because they are themselves not self-sufficient, right? Like they really need me to just like carry them through life, whatever it is. So we have to determine who belongs in our nucleus. And then we have our inner circle, right? Now these are whoever it is, right? Like we have a close relationship with, but I'm not gonna tell my deep dark secrets to. And then we have an outer circle, and then we have our toxic circle, right? And then we have I call it the nunya, which is the void. If you have like an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper like this, and you draw these circles in here, you've got this void area. Those are the nunyas. Those are those people that just incite you that you don't even know, like on social media, that are posting about whatever, right? Like you put them out there. But so we look at this and we go, okay, I have my nucleus, I have my inner circle, my outer circle, and my toxic circle. But you don't necessarily have to put people in a specific spot and assign them to that and stick to it. That could be, what? My mom's my nucleus. She's my ride or die. She's my everything, until we start talking about politics. And then I got to move her to the toxic, right? So it's also about knowing how to navigate and move people depending upon where you are, who you're around, what's the topic, what's the, need, desire, whatever it is. And then when you realize you get to control that, like, wow, I love my best friend, but I hate going to concerts with her because she always gets trashy, drunk, fall on the ground, embarrass me, whatever, or, takes off with the first random Joe. Like I know people that, and they're like, she's my ride or die, but I don't want to ride or die with her to that concert. And so you move it, you get to move it and say, wow, that sounds like a lot of fun for you. I'm going to pass, and it doesn't, you don't have to, just because she's in your nucleus doesn't mean you have to go. That could be a very toxic situation for you. And you get to go, no, I pass. And this is one way that we can visualize ourselves having the autonomy to have some control, to be the driver of what our life looks like, feels like, and is experienced like, as well as how others receive us and how they get to see us in a completely different light.
Yeah, because I
how to use that voice to say things in a proper way. Like I just said, hey, that sounds great for you. Enjoy yourself. Have a ton of fun. I'm going to pass. Doesn't say, you're not judging what they want to go and do. Right. Because if we start judging our friends, then they're like, you're judging. And then we cause a rift. We can approach it. We're like, nah, go have fun. I'm going to pass. Then it's just like, I just don't feel like it. Right. Like, so we start to navigate our voice when we start to determine, like, we're in control of who's in what part of my life and how.
Well, you're bringing up one of the most important cornerstones of recovery of codependency, which is boundaries. And again, when you have codependency and your awareness is out here, you really don't have a sense of who this is and where I stop and where someone else starts. There is no boundary because we're so we're so out there. So a part of recovery is learning to create, establish, and like maintain healthy boundaries around what you want, what you're willing to do, what you're interested in, and being able to express them to other people. And
Absolutely.
then
And just to insert this for my clients, just because I like them to continue to follow, when so boundaries, yes, that's your filtration system. You'll be able to use that. But so when the kind of boundaries that Geva is referring to would be the limits and limitations, those hard, fast stops, those parameters that you put in around you. And then you can utilize that filtrating boundary system to decide what you're going to let in and what you're going to send out and how you might internalize or not internalize something. Sorry, we use a little bit of different terminology around boundaries. So wanted to tie that together and make sure they understood limits and limitations.
So key and important in recovery. And I guess one thing I would say about it is it's hard. It's hard for a codependent to learn to establish boundaries. It's really a challenge, but it's probably the most important thing in life is learning how to establish these boundaries. But it's also okay to screw up and not to be holding yourself to a standard too high of perfection, and also to realize it's a process of learning to establish boundaries. And it's also like creating new habits. And I can say that I did well on one of them yesterday. And I also screwed up on one yesterday and didn't quite understand that I screwed up until today.
That's okay, because you're reflecting. You're doing the reflection. Sure.
And that I'll do it differently next time. Like I allowed somebody else to be in control of my agenda. And
that worked out for you.
It didn't work out so well, but tomorrow's another day. We'll do better tomorrow. It's a process. I really feel like I'm getting better. I am so much better than I was before. I used to be like, oh, what do you think? When is good for you? And what we need to do as codependents is, what do I want first? Stop. What do I want? What do I need? Take a breath, express it, be willing to compromise.
Yes. Yes. And there's lots of tools and tactics that come into play to help us cultivate and develop those skill sets and tools. Active listening, reflective listening, the power of inquiry, right? So before we give our answer, somebody says they want something from us or they want us to do something for them or whatever, it's always a good idea to say, well, help me understand a little bit better what exactly it is that you're needing and or wanting from me. Can you be more specific? And what is it that you'd like for me to have this done for you by? Oh, today? Yeah, no, Thursday works better for me. How's that? But we have to get in there and we have to really learn how to, first allow that person to be heard, which gives us the time to process. Right? Because we come from a world, the whole world kind of operates in this stance as a general rule of, we get a text message, we've got to answer it right away. Somebody asks us a question, we've got to have the answer right away. Like, why do we think we live life on a pop quiz? It's not a pop quiz. We can say, that sounds interesting. When do you need to have an answer from me by? And just don't even answer. Just, they're inviting you to something. When do you need to buy the tickets, right? Like, can I get back to you by Friday? I really want to, and then sit on it and think about it. How many times have we all been roped into going somewhere with our friends and then regretted it and dreaded it every day until it got there, and then didn't really enjoy the event either?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Because we make our decision right now because we feel like we're not good enough if we don't have an answer right away. Or, oh my God, somebody might need me. Oh my God.
Yeah.
They ask me a question, I have to answer. And we're just so trapped in that we really need to be able to, utilize the power of inquiry or just the art of pause so that we can become responsive, which affords us that space to actually cultivate how we want it to look, feel, and be. And wow, everybody's getting like, a quick lesson. But these are the things that we need to be able to do. We need to be able to go, how do I really think, feel, believe, whatever, and formulate our true response, not one that's guided by what you think somebody else wants you to say or needs from you, or what you think is the path of least resistance. That's not the answer. Sit with it. Sometimes it has to be uncomfortable for a minute. Sometimes we have to make hard decisions. We have to make hard changes. We have to embrace hard things. There's a lot of things in life that we can't do anything about. And if I look at things from the stance of my mantra, which is, this is my life too, it gets to look, feel, be however I want it to. I have to be willing to extend that to you and to every other person on the planet. And then that enables me to walk through life in the stance of a learner instead of the stance of a judger. And all the things, I'm sorry, I could go on for hours.
Well, yeah, taking a pause and creating these boundaries is part of recovery. Let's talk about, let's give a few other ideas in our last moments here about how to approach recovery.
Yes.
From codependency. We already mentioned therapy can be part of it. Coaching, get a good coach who's familiar with codependency. Yep. A couple other steps. I've played around a little bit with affirmations. So working on finding out what the actual thoughts are and then refuting them and making like affirmation cards. I've done that. But one thing that I think has helped me to move so quickly through this process, and not that I'm done, but I feel like I've been moving quickly through this, is that I've had a meditation practice. And I think that is a good foundation. It's a good skill that helps with recovery, because what meditation does is it helps you to become aware of your own thoughts. Mm-hmm. So many times we are in a place of being so attached to our thoughts and our beliefs that we are not even separate from them. We don't even realize there is a separation. And when you're in meditation, you start to be able to watch your thoughts and realize that you are separate from your thoughts. And then you're able to have this space where you're able to evaluate the thoughts about whether they are valid or not, and then take the next step to choose to act on them or not act on them. So I think that meditation could be helpful for a lot of people in recovery. What are your thoughts on that?
I know a lot of people in my practice and outside of my practice that are, colleagues or just people that I know from being in recovery that do very much rely on meditation, but in very different ways. And I know that, some people are, meditation's not my thing. I'm more of an active person. So I think, defining meditation, because we get to add, edit, delete, get our own. So if meditation for you is, actually sitting in position and more of that true mindfulness based practice, then great. Like, find that if you really enjoy that. But some people really have a better capability of being in a meditative state in movement. And I want people to hear that that's okay, because we can be in a meditative place or a stance or a state and be in motion, if that works for you, right? Like for me, I like that. I like to have it plugged into my ears, and I like to be not distracted by anything else, which means for me, if I'm in movement, like I'm on a walk, like I'm not going to get distracted by something in my house that walks by, like a dog, because I will. That whole squirrel thing. And so, but I think it's about finding what works for you and being slow and steady with it, because it does take some training. Wouldn't you agree? To be able to get into that mindfulness presence, or that present, that you have the ability to even be in a meditative place. It takes some time to practice.
It absolutely does. And I can imagine people feeling so disconnected that they're not able to even sit, for long periods of time. So it's not necessarily a prescription for everyone. But I should also mention that, as you said, not only does the word meditation have different connotations, but there are different kinds of meditation. There are like hundreds. And in the United States, we're only pretty much familiar with transcendental meditation. When we say meditation, we usually think transcendental meditation when you're sitting and trying to get into some transcendental state. But there's all different kinds of meditation. There's guided meditations, there's body-based somatic meditations. I've been getting a lot lately out of somatic meditation, body-based, where you're focusing on being in the body and different parts of the body, because as somebody who's codependent and the awareness is out here, when you can meditate and practice being inside your body, oh my gosh, it really helps with connecting to yourself, connecting to your own feelings, and having a sense of, a boundary of your own body. What is me versus what is somebody else? So just spending time with that has been super helpful for me. But yeah, there are lots of different kinds.
I like to make sure that I stay, this is my own personal practice, and those that I work with that it speaks to like it also, but for me, I like to be connected with my body in all things that I'm doing. So I could be boiling eggs and I still want to be paying attention to anything or everything that my body might be telling me. And so I like to stay engaged with it. I think it's what's afforded me that ability to live with chronic pain, to live with chronic inflammation, to live with autoimmune, to live with all of the things, and do so, with grace and, and capability, and knowing my limits and limitations, and exercising the modifications that I've discovered and uncovered that work well for me, that allow me to live my life feeling very well balanced, because life balance is a series of at least 8 categories. In one of my categories, I have 6 subcategories. So for me, life balance is big. And if I'm not connected with my body and I'm not listening to it, if I'm not paying attention to how the fuel I put into my body is speaking to me, how am I going to know if it's the right fuel or an effective fuel or, and if I'm not paying attention to how I'm moving in some activity, right? Like at the beginning of COVID, I ripped out a linen closet and built in, like this whole different unit. And if I hadn't been listening to my body, I wouldn't know where to pause and stop for the day, so that I wouldn't incite inflammation. And so I think it's just a way. So I love that you talked about that somatic, because I think that's a great thing for people to hear, is we have that ability to be so connected with our body that we know when something isn't going to be right for us. Like that gut response is going to be there if you're about to engage or do something with somebody or for somebody, or accept something from somebody, an attitude, a behavior, whatever, a judgment. You feel that if you're in tune with your body and it's important to you, you feel it immediately in your gut. For some, I mean, for me, it's right here. And when I was learning this, I would actually witness my gut descend as a situation was not unfolding in a way that was okay with me. And I went literally from feeling great to distended. And I'm like, what the heck is that? And so I started getting intrigued about my body and its responses and the stress responses. And I'm like, wow. So there's just so much that we can do. To connect.
Yeah, it sounds like you've worked really hard to come in connection with your own body, because I wanted to mention that goes back to original traumas. When we experience trauma as human beings, one of the immediate responses is to dissociate from the body. The mind will disconnect from the body. And sometimes it comes back and sometimes it doesn't. And so the awareness stays outside of the body. And that feeds right into a codependent situation. You know, if you have a trauma and you're in a healthy environment, your caregivers, everyone around you, they're going to help you get back to a state of a balance. But if you're in a codependent, crazy, addictive, violent situation, you know, you may stay dissociated, or you may acquire a habit of dissociating from your body whenever there's stress. You may have a very low tolerance for stress, for other people being stressed, for other people's discomfort. You may have a low tolerance for that and feel like I have to do something about it because of being of dealing with so much trauma yourself and having that not be coming back into balance yourself. So there's such a connection between trauma and all of this addiction, codependency. It's just amazing. But kudos to you for getting back in touch with your body. And I hope that we all can do that.
Journey. It's been a journey, but you know, it's such a gift and it's such a blessing. And it's, you know, because it's purposeful, because it's persistent, right? Like I just have to be engaged with myself every day. And it's just super rewarding. And to see people, you know, my spouse all the time, he's like, it's just amazing, the transformation. Mm-hmm. Right. And nothing happened down in our relationship, but he's like, wow, you know, like you're not, you know, derailed, and, you know, it's just different. It's just different. And it's almost hard to describe the shift, because it's so subtle, but mostly because it's deep within us that most people can't articulate it for you either. They're just like, something's different about you. I don't know what it is. and so the work is tough, and it everybody does it at their own level. I tend to be all in most of the time, but it's important to me. And so, yeah. But, you know, where I'm probably coming really close to sucking up all of your free time today. But I'd love to have people, you know, drop in questions, spark us to have a deeper conversation. Maybe somebody has some things that they'd really like for us to talk about more, and we can do that. Or maybe we can just answer the questions in the comments. And if you really are standoffishy and don't want to put your stuff out there publicly, you can send them to me. You can friend request Geva, and we'll be happy to, you know.
So yeah, I would say too that if you're interested in like hearing more about the story and hearing it in a story form, that I'm working on a book right now that talks about this journey of recovery, and there's so much to it. It's a really interesting story. But if you're interested in hearing that, feel free to private message me, and I'll put you on the waiting list for the book to come out. Yay. It's going to be at least 6 months, but you know, we're putting together the list of people who want to get that book as soon as possible.
That's so awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exciting to write, because it's exciting to see what happened and the change. And I'm also putting in like, these little stories from my life and my childhood so that it makes sense by the end what, actually happens and the change that takes
Nice.
place. So it's
Nice.
a challenge to write, but it's a joy to write too.
Well, definitely keep me posted. Well, I'll just put my name on the list in a little while. Or you can just do it. Either way. But again, thank you. Hang out for 1 second. I'm just going to go ahead and turn off the live so you guys will know how to get in touch with us. Most of you know how to reach me or find me. And if you want to find out some of the options for working on codependency, let me know. I'd be happy to share with you the program that we use here in my practice, because we have one of those. I promise it's really there. And there is a very, very systematic process that, we've been able to time and time again, make very beneficial and work. And if you want tips and tricks and tools from Geva, she'll have her information in there in the comments for you in a little while. And, feel free to ask away.
You can also find me on the website at gevasalerno.com or on Facebook or on YouTube.
Yeah, just drop all those links in the comments, and then that way we don't have misspelled words. Anyway, Geva, hang out for 1 sec. I'm just going to go ahead and end. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We'll see you next week.